Hey Rebel Youth, it's Chris here. Today's video is about the Bible, about God's Word. At Rebel Youth, we really value the place of God's Word. We believe that God still speaks to us today through His Word. We believe that God's Word is powerful and effective. And we really think that the practice of regularly reading God's Word is an important one. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you a couple of my Bibles, show you how I read the Bible, a bit of a glimpse into that, and share about a verse that will be a good, challenge for us as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this camera onto my shoulder so that you see what I see. Here's my Bible. And first page I'm going to turn to is actually the contents, because there's 66 books that make up the Bible, all squeezed in. And it can be really, I think, a helpful thing to do to actually learn the names of these books of the Bible and also remember where they are, because remembering where a book is will help the words of that book to make sense. One of the mistakes that we can make is we can put ourselves at the center of the Bible. Sadly, the Bible is not about us. The Bible is about God. It's about God and His people, and we are, praise Jesus, God's people. But we need to remember that the primary character of the Bible is God, and it's the story of God and the story of how He's redeemed His people. Most of you would know the Old Testament means all the books before Jesus. The New Testament is all the books after Jesus. If you want to read the stories of Jesus, you come to the New Testament, especially these first four books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Really just want to challenge you guys in your own free time to get familiar with this page, or more specifically, more familiar with the books that are on this page. I want to just put it out there, the challenge: learn the 66 books off by heart, or at the very least, just get to a place where you hear a name of a book and you sort of are able to know where it is. One of the mistakes that we make as well is we think that reading the Bible is all about becoming academically smart, about filling our brain or being smarter than, everyone else. It's totally a wrong way of looking at it. Rather than looking at God's Word as if it's a textbook to learn, we need to sometimes think of it as a meal to be consumed, as our sort of daily bread for our soul. And what that change means is that when we read God's Word, we are filling our minds up, but we're also feeding our souls, and we feed our souls, hopefully, regularly. And that's what it's really about, doing it regularly, not to become smarter, not to know everything, but to be doing it, feeding on it on a regular basis. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn to the New Testament book of Ephesians, which in my Bible here is on page 627. It's in the New Testament. And Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians. So here we are, book of Ephesians. Ephesians is one of the letters that was written by Paul in the New Testament to some of the early churches to really build them up and to give them truth about Jesus. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in another one of my Bibles here, because one of the things that I think is really helpful when you're reading the Bible is to mark it, to write things down, to underline. And here is a Bible that I really like. I got this one from Koorong. I like it because the margins are extra thick on this one. And if you ever think, I can't, I don't want to mark my Bible. I don't want to, put a little indent on. I don't want the page to be a bit creased or folded. Well, I mean, there's a lot of truth in the fact that we should respect God's Word and look after our Bibles, but also our Bibles are there to be used. They're not there to just look nice. And if you want to underline, if you want to ask questions, if you want to highlight like I've done here, it's a good thing to do. Another thing that I have sometimes is an extra notebook, which I write personal notes to myself, challenge myself, sort of, things. I won't show you guys that because it's a bit more of a personal nature, but I personally find helpful just writing junk down and just ordering my thoughts and thinking about it and meditating on and praying about it after doing all of that. So that's something that you guys can and should do. One thing that I'm really reluctant to do is sort of say, this is how you should read the Bible. This is what you should do, whether it's a sort of a reading medal, like there's one called SOAP or things like that. Because what I think is really important is that you find a way that works for you to regularly engage with God's Word. I think that's the important thing. Find a way that it will work for you, to do it regularly. Remember, that's the important part here. Okay, so the verse that I want to read for you guys is here in Ephesians chapter 5. It might not work with the camera, but take my word for it. It's there, Ephesians 5, verse 15. It says, "Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Especially verse 16, make the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. The days that we live in at the moment in COVID-19 times, they're not the days that we planned, right? Nobody's having the year that they planned out. And for some of us, there's a lot of grief there. There's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of frustration. What Paul encourages us is, even though the days are evil, even though the days are not good days, to still make the most of every opportunity, specifically to make every opportunity to love Jesus and serve Jesus. And I'm sure you guys aren't having the year that you planned, and some of your days must feel a lot harder than you'd hoped. But we can still be challenged to make the most of every opportunity to connect with God, to show love to the people in our world, and to really serve Jesus in the ways that we have the ability to do so. There's the space and the capacity to do so. Make the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. That's from Ephesians chapter 5. One last thing I thought I'd point out, but I don't want to go too over the top on this, is another thing that you can do to help you in reading the Bible is to get some devotional material or some Bible commentaries. I love Bible commentaries, but you've got to be very careful with these things because Bible commentaries aren't God's word. They're extra things that can help us wrestle with and understand what God's word's trying to say. So, for example, Ephesians chapter 5, I've got this commentary here. It's by a guy who's smarter than I will ever be, knows more about God's word than I'll ever be, more wise than I will ever be. So he's written some words on Ephesians. And so I come and just have a brief look at what he's got to say about, a particular verse. And that can be helpful too. But again, like I said, don't want to go too over the top on that because you don't need any extra material for God to speak to us. Just need his Bible, just need his word. And I just really want to encourage you guys that in your time that you have now especially during this COVID time, to be taking the chance to be regularly connecting with God's word in a way that works for you. See you later.